Hi and welcome to Terry Talks Movies. This time around I've got another movie festival for you. 13 movies which I think would sit together if I was to do a horror movie festival. Now, it's not likely that I'm ever going to be able to do it, but I've put together 13 movies which would be the way I'd program a horror movie festival were I to do it tomorrow. That doesn't mean that my opinion wouldn't change in the future if I saw more movies or I thought of different movies to have in it. This is me here right now, the ones I would put into a horror movie festival. So let's get started. The first one I got for you has two names. The first name, which is the one by which I knew it when it originally came out, was Deathline. And the second name is Raw Meat. Raw Meat is a hell of a good little hidden gem of an English 1970s horror movie. It's about a group of people who were trapped underground in London during the construction of the metro lines, the London Underground, who stayed there trapped in a collapsed tunnel and bred for a number of generations. Then in the 1970s, a man who's the sole survivor of these lost people and who has been isolated all his life, his wife's just died, goes out to find food in the underground tunnels. He doesn't deal well with other people and he's a cannibal. And he starts killing people, including somebody who's quite close to the government. And an Inspector Calhoun is sent to investigate this guy. And Calhoun's played by the wonderful Donald Pleasance.
Are you sure he was alive when you left him?
How many times?
Are you absolutely certain he didn't come up after you?
Yes.
You mean he did?
He did not.
It's a really great hidden gem of a horror movie. The kind of monster in the horror movie is sympathetic. He barely speaks. He's been isolated his whole life. He's inbred. He ultimately becomes a very sympathetic character and one that you just don't know what society would do to him even if they could catch him alive. It's a real thought piece in some ways, but it's also quite horrifying as well. We even get a little bit of Christopher Lee in this one, playing an intelligence officer, of course, and an upper class bureaucratic mandarin in a sense. But this one, I first saw it in the cinema and it blew me away at the time. It was when I was a teenager, going to the cinema a lot. And these kind of movies hit for me hard at the time because there wasn't anything else like them. I didn't have all of the movies that I'd seen since then to compare it to. And so seeing a movie, even if it is a little bit crude like this, is fantastic. And Donald Pleasance in Inspector Calhoun is a hoot. He's sarcastic, he's arch, he's very bolshy, which I really love. His left-wing bias really shows. And it looks like Donald Pleasance has created the character out of whole cloth, and I love that. Recommend that one. That'd be a great way to start a horror film festival. The next one, I thought I'd do another mind-blowing one. Red Letter Media have just covered this one, so I had it on my mind, and I've talked about it a little bit on the channel, but not very much. It was directed by Ted Post, and it's a kind of hidden gem 1970s horror movie called The Baby. This one is messed up. It stars Anjanette Comer and Ruth Roman. Anjanette Comer is a social worker who comes to investigate a family who have an adult child who has the mind of a baby and is treated like a baby and is kept in a cot. He's dressed in baby clothes even though he is physically an adult human being. And the social worker starts investigating and tries to find out whether the man baby, in a sense, actually has the intellect of a child or whether he's spent his whole life being gaslighted into an infantile state. It's a very messed up movie, and there's a hook at the end which really blew my mind. I'm not going to spoil that for you because it is a mad movie. Arrow Video put this one out, and it's all region. And I always liked Ruth Roman and things. Anjanette Comer I also liked a lot. It's a really messed up movie. It comes with a booklet, which is always a nice addition. And if you haven't seen it, you really should. And if you have seen it, you'll know what I mean when I say that the ending has a weird and freaky hook to it. Really recommend that one. I think it'd really blast a film festival into a higher gear. This one I thought I'd do a little bit of lesbian vampirism because who doesn't like that? This is Jose Larraz's Vampyres, which is set in England in winter. Pair of lesbian vampires, a couple go on a camping trip and meet them. They live in a crumbling Gothic mansion. It's got a real vibe to it. It's not the best movie in the world, and the actresses playing the vampires aren't particularly charismatic. They are very good looking, but they don't have a lot of riz to them. But nonetheless, it's got a real mood about it. This came in the Jose Larraz box set that I've got of 3 films. And Vampires, I saw it in the 1970s. And I saw it for quite prurient reasons. There was a lot of nudity in it. But it still has a real feel about it and an atmosphere, which puts it to one side of many other vampire movies. The only thing I really compare it to, there are 2 movies I'd compare it to. The first one would be Vampire Lovers, the Hammer horror film, that's a period piece. And the other one is the second movie I'm going to do as a double feature with this, Harry Kummel's Daughters of Darkness. It's set in a Belgian seaside hotel off-season where a newly married couple are holidaying there and meet a countess and her friend. And the countess is a vampire and the friend is her Renfield. Very weird vibe to it, particularly regarding the husband's mother, who he keeps phoning back in London. It's a mad, mixed up movie, but it's got a real slow, creeping vibe, very much in the style of Sheridan Le Fanu's Camilla, which it is partly based on. It stars Delphine Seyrig and John Carlin and Danielle Ouimet and Andrea Rao. Again, it's got nudity in it, but it's a very kind of queer-friendly horror movie, at a time when horror movies were only queer-friendly to the extent of showing lots of female nudity. But this one has a little more to it, which is why it's become quite a cult film over the years. And it's got this wonderful Blu-ray release from Blue Underground. It's an American release, region locked to America, but fortunately I've got a multi-region Blu-ray player. Now the next one is probably the most transgressive and shocking horror movie that I'm going to do in this film festival. Umbrella Entertainment have just released it in a premium edition, and it is a deeply messed up film. I'm not going to tell you much about it because you've got to go on the journey of this film. And as I've said before, this is a movie that is really great. The quality's there. It's got a philosophy behind it. It's part of the new French extreme horror genre. And it's a very good horror movie that you're probably only going to watch once. And it's Martyrs. This one is extreme. This is not for your auntie to watch with you. It's extraordinarily brutal, but it has a purpose and it has a philosophy. And the story of 2 abused young women who go to find the place where one of them was abused and find, in essence, a cult of people who are trying to get human transcendence through torture. Really, really confronting, this one, but it is a fine film. And at times when you kind of reach out, there are going to be movies that really appall you and confront you and horrify you, and yet you can realize and accept that they are incredibly adept movies. And Martyrs is definitely that. There's the slip cover of the edition that I've got for this. I've also got a booklet in this one as well. It's not a first date movie, but it is a movie, if you have friends who admire horror films, you might want to put that one on. But as I said, it's not a movie I'm probably going to watch again, but it is a very fine horror movie. So I thought I'd go from the new French extreme to Italian zombies. And this is Umberto Lenzi's Nightmare City, which just hits the ground running. It's about a zombie breakout in an Italian regional city. It's based around a television studio. The people from the television studio are meeting an aeroplane coming in from overseas. Aeroplane opens up, zombies pour out and start attacking and infecting the city. It's very much got that kind of Italian 1970s gore about it, which is quite icky. There's a really bravura sequence where the zombies invade a television studio which is doing live TV. It does it really well. I love this movie for that. It's just relentless in what it does, and it does it really well. You never know which character is going to get bitten and killed next. This is another Arrow video release which is multi-region. I would love to see this at some stage with an audience full of people. The relentless, fast-paced, bam, 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 blood, gore, people running pace of Nightmare City will be a lot of fun in an audience of like-minded people. Then I thought I'd lighten it up. You got to chuck in at least one Vincent Price movie. Theatre of Blood, Vincent Price, Diana Rigg, Ian Hendry, about an actor who is killing critics. He's a Shakespearean actor played by Vincent Price, who with his daughter decides to kill the people who didn't like his Shakespearean roles. It's got his tongue firmly in his cheek, and it is a lot of fun. It's from the 1970s. Diana Rigg getting to do something a bit lighter and a bit fun, and she gets to put on some disguises, as indeed does Vincent Price. Directed by Douglas Hickox. It's got a great supporting cast. Ian Hendry's in there, as I said. Harry Andrews, Coral Brown, who married Vincent Price. Robert Coote, Jack Hawkins, Michael Hordern, Arthur Lowe, Robert Morley, Dennis Price, and Milo O'Shea. Killer cast, and a lot of them get killed. Theatre of Blood is just a lot of fun. Then I throw in a television movie which everybody who's seen it loves, and everybody who's seen it only remembers one of the three stories. Of course, it's Trilogy of Terror with Karen Black. Three stories based on Richard Matheson's stories. And the one that people remember is one with the Zuni fetish warrior doll that comes to life and starts attacking Karen Black's character in her apartment. And by the way, that sequence is actually called Amelia. It's named after the character. The other two are Julie, and the second one's called Millicent and Therese. But it's the third one that lands for people and hits for people. I thought that Trilogy of Terror would be a great one to throw in the middle of the movie festival, so that with Throne of Blood it eases people back from Martyrs and the extreme horror of Martyrs and Nightmare City and takes them into a comfort zone in a sense. Next I was sort of throw in a vampire movie, directed by the Sperry brothers. Ethan Hawke, Willem Dafoe, Claudia Carver, Isabel Lucas and Sam Neill in Daybreakers. Story about a future where the vampires are basically taken over and are milking humanity for their blood. Beautiful world building in this. Really nice vibe. Filmed, I believe, in Sydney. Like Predestination, the more recent Sperry Brothers movie. It shows these guys really know their genre work. It's part science fiction, part horror. The vampires are quite good. Willem Dafoe playing a vampire is never a bad thing in a movie. Shadow of the Vampire will tell you that. But I could watch endless movies with Willem Dafoe playing vampires. I think he's got the face and the style that lends itself towards sucking on people's necks. Daybreakers I thought I'd throw in just as a local content thing. And also because it's a bloody good vampire movie. Pun intended. Next one's a film by Teruo Ishii, a Japanese horror film from the 1970s. Which I'm not going to tell you anything about because you've got to go on the journey of this one. It's got a little bit of a feel of horror, a little bit of Lafcadio Hearn kind of stuff. It's a movie called Horrors of Malformed Men. It's hard to describe. It's got mutated people, it's got beautiful use of Japanese scenery, but it's a trip. I watched this one late at night, which is the ideal time to watch it. And it's about a medical student who slips out of an asylum in which he's been wrongfully confined and assumes the identity of a recently deceased nobleman who looks like him, pretends to be this nobleman, even sneaks into the man's conjugal bed, and then things get even weirder. The Horrors of Malformed Men, I was recommended this by friends, and they were right. Great Japanese horror film, and there are many great Japanese horror films. But this one is something deeply weird, and I loved it for that. You should check this one out. This one's executive produced by Roger Corman. Very Lovecraftian, and being a Lovecraftian horror movie festival is always a good thing. From 1970 or thereabouts, Dean Stockwell, Sandra Dee, Ed Begley, Lloyd Bochner, the Dunwich Horror, where Dean Stockwell tries to sacrifice Sandra Dee to the old gods, Cthulhu, Yog-Sothoth, Nyarlathotep, all of those guys. Really great. Really freaky. It has a little bit of feel of those Dan Curtis around 1970 television horror films, at least in the way it's shot. It's directed by Daniel Haller, but then it goes off at a tangent, and it is deeply, wonderfully freaky. It's not the best movie in the world, but it's perfect early 1970s drive-in fodder. It's at that quality, and Dean Stockwell commits to the role of playing this mad guy called Wilbur Whatley, who is trying to bring back the old gods, because why the hell not? There's a lot of solarization effects in this as things get at the pointy end of stuff, but again, that's part of that 1970s vibe. I love the Dunwich Horror. I'm going to watch it again soon. And Dean Stockwell is such fun, just rolling his eyes and committing to 11 for playing this crazy character. Next one's an action horror film by Brian De Palma from the 1970s. It's got telekinesis, it's got terrorists, it's got Kirk Douglas and John Cassavetes exploding. It's The Fury. The Fury is just balls to the wall, and Kirk Douglas plays an intelligence agent whose son is kidnapped by an organisation that wants to use his son's psychic powers. And he's trying to get his son back, and he meets another telekinetic psychic person played by Amy Irving. And there are some really great action sequences in this, one of which is done in slow-mo and works really well. This is De Palma just going mad with John Farris's original novel and giving us something really weird. And having John Cassavetes playing the bad guy is a lot of fun. This is one of those movies that Cassavetes did for the money so that he could finance one of his own films. But I like it. It's really great, and it's interesting the way that the organisation that Cassavetes works for is gaslighting and grooming Andrew Stevens, playing Kirk Douglas's son, to weaponise his psychic powers for the US government and the black ops of the US government in particular. It's got an interesting soundtrack by John Williams, made it not too far away from Star Wars. It's ridiculous, it's mad, it's over the top, and John Cassavetes exploding at the end is always a bit of fun. Last one I got is a BFI Flipside movie from the 1970s about a teenage motorcycle gang who become the undead. Stars Nicky Henson and Harry Andrews and Beryl Reid. Psychomania. If you haven't seen Psychomania, it's a totally insane movie. With the frog god in it. Trying to describe this movie is difficult because it seems to go off at a tangent every few minutes and something else WTF happens. But it's the kind of movie that I saw in double features in the 1970s when I was hiding out in cinemas. None of it's at all realistic. You've got to just kind of buy into the silliness and the over-the-top horror and the ridiculousness of this movie to really appreciate it. There's the back. There's a ton of extras on here, but if you're doing a movie festival, you're not going to get extras. But I think Psychomania is a good way to end a movie festival with something just a little bit mad and a little bit, huh? And what? And this is definitely that. It's just a groovy movie to enjoy and to tell your friends about after you've seen it. So that's it. There's my 13 movies for a horror movie festival. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you know when a new video is going up. Take a look at some of my horror playlists. There's a lot of good movies I've talked about on that. You can also support the channel by becoming a channel member or else by becoming a patron at patreon.com/TerryTalksMovies. Got the Monday video coming up and I've got something interesting for that. Then we roll around to Science Fiction Saturday next Saturday. This is the exception. I'm doing Horror Saturday instead of Science Fiction Saturday this week. So until all of that stuff happens, watch some good movies, watch some bad movies, watch some incredibly mad and bad and terribly entertaining horror movies, and I'll catch you next time.